I stood in that courtroom while my own daughter, Emily Carter, looked me straight in the eye and said, "She's selfish. She destroyed our family." Every word felt like a knife, but I didn't defend myself. I didn't say a single thing, because the truth I had buried for 15 years wasn't something a child was ever meant to carry. The room went silent as my lawyer slowly stood up. "Your Honor," he said, "we request to read the full testimony." And in that moment, I knew everything Emily believed about me was about to shatter. If you've ever been misunderstood by someone you love, I want you to stay with me on this. Please like and subscribe if stories like this speak to your heart. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? I'd really love to know. Before everything fell apart, before my daughter looked at me like I was a stranger, we had a life that felt quiet, simple, and at least to me, full of love. My name is Rachel Price, and for most of my adult life, I have been a nurse at a small hospital on the north side of Chicago. It wasn't glamorous work. It wasn't the kind of job people bragged about at dinner parties. But it was steady, honest, and meaningful. I spent my nights caring for people at their most vulnerable, holding hands, calming fears, sometimes being the last voice they ever heard. And every morning, no matter how exhausted I was, I came home to the one person who made it all worth it. My daughter, Emily Carter. She was 5 years old when it became just the two of us. I still remember the morning I realized things would never be the same again. The apartment felt too quiet, too still. I made her breakfast like I always did: scrambled eggs, toast, cut into little squares because she liked it that way, and I forced a smile I didn't feel. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, her small voice innocent, unaware of how much that question would follow me for years. I told her he had to go away for a while, that he loved her, that none of this was her fault. What I didn't tell her was why. From that day on, I made a promise to myself she would never feel the weight of that truth. Not if I could help it. Life wasn't easy. There were nights I worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. Times when I skipped meals so she could have everything she needed. I learned how to stretch every dollar, how to fix things myself, how to be both mother and father in a world that never seemed to slow down. But Emily, she made it easier. She was a bright, curious child, the kind who asked endless questions and actually listened to the answers. She loved books, especially the ones about strong women who overcame impossible odds. Sometimes I would watch her reading on the couch, her legs tucked under her, completely lost in another world, and I would think she's going to be okay. We had our routines. Sunday mornings were for pancakes. Friday nights were for old movies and popcorn. On my days off, I would take her to the park by the lake, and we'd sit there for hours, her talking about school, her dreams, her friends, and me just listening, grateful that she still wanted to share her world with me. She used to tell people I was her hero. I remember once when she was about 10, she had to write an essay at school about the person she admired most. She chose me. "My mom is the strongest person I know," she wrote. "She works all night and still smiles in the morning. She never gives up even when things are hard." I kept that paper. I still have it folded carefully in a drawer I rarely open anymore, because now those words feel like they belong to a different life. As Emily grew older, things naturally began to change. That's what happens with teenagers. They become more independent, more private. They start building a world that doesn't revolve around you anymore. At first, it was small things. She stopped telling me everything about her day. She spent more time in her room. She rolled her eyes at my questions like they were an intrusion instead of concern. I told myself it was normal. I told myself every mother goes through this. But even then, there was something else. Something I couldn't quite name. A distance that felt deeper than typical teenage rebellion. Like a quiet wall slowly being built between us, brick by brick. I tried to reach her. "Everything okay, honey?" I would ask. "Yeah, Mom." "I'm fine," she'd say, barely looking up from her phone. And I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because the truth was, I was already carrying enough. There were nights after she went to bed when I would sit alone in the kitchen, staring at nothing, my mind drifting back to a past I had worked so hard to bury. Memories don't disappear just because you refuse to speak them out loud. They wait. They linger in the quiet moments, in the spaces between breaths. And sometimes they come back when you least expect it. Still, I kept going for Emily. Everything I did, every sacrifice I made was for her. To give her a life better than the one I had known. To make sure she never had to feel fear or instability or the kind of uncertainty that leaves scars you can't see. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought protecting her from the truth was an act of love. I never imagined that one day that same silence would be the very thing that made her turn against me. Looking back now, I can see the signs. The way she would hesitate before answering certain questions. The way her eyes would search my face like she was trying to find something I wasn't saying. But I ignored it. Because I believed time would keep the past buried. I believed the life we had built together was strong enough to withstand anything. I was wrong. Because the past doesn't stay buried forever. And when it finally comes back, it doesn't knock politely at the door. It crashes in. And when it did, it didn't just take my peace. It took my daughter with it. The first time I saw David Carter again, I didn't recognize him. Not at first. It was a late afternoon in early fall, the kind where the air in Chicago turns crisp and the light starts to fade earlier than you expect. I had just gotten off a long shift, 12 hours on my feet, my body aching, my mind foggy from too many patients and too little rest. All I wanted was to go home, take off my shoes, and sit quietly with a cup of tea before Emily came back from her evening class. Instead, I found him standing outside my apartment building, leaning casually against the iron railing like he belonged there, like he had never left. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. My brain had done that before, pulled old memories into the present when I was too tired to fight them off. But then he straightened and our eyes met. And I knew. 15 years. 15 years since I had last seen him. And somehow, he looked almost the same. Older, yes. His hair thinner, streaked with gray. Lines etched deeper into his face. But his posture, confident, controlled, was exactly as I remembered. So was the way he smiled. That same calm, disarming smile that had once made me believe he was someone I could trust. "Rachel," he said, like he had every right to say my name. "You look well." My entire body went cold. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. He held up his hands slightly, as if trying to show he meant no harm. "I just wanted to talk." "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. He held up his hands slightly, as if trying to show he meant no harm. "I just wanted to talk." "No," I said immediately. "You don't get to just show up here after 15 years and say you want to talk." His expression shifted, not angry, not defensive, just patient, like he had expected this reaction. "I understand," he said quietly. "But I'm not here for you." That sentence hit harder than anything else he could have said. I felt something tighten in my chest. "Then why are you here?" He hesitated, just long enough to make my stomach drop. "I want to see Emily." The world seemed to tilt for a second. No, I said again, this time firmer. Absolutely not. I'm her father, Rachel. You were her father, I snapped. You gave that up a long time ago. His jaw tightened just slightly. A crack in the calm mask. I didn't give anything up, he said. I was pushed out. I let out a bitter laugh. Is that what you've been telling yourself all these years? It's the truth. No, I said, stepping closer, lowering my voice so no one passing by could hear us. The truth is something you lost the right to talk about a long time ago. For a moment, we just stood there, the tension thick between us. And then, just like that, his expression softened again. I'm not here to fight, he said. I want a chance to know my daughter. My heart started pounding. Not from fear, not exactly, but from something deeper. Something that felt dangerously close to panic. You don't get that chance, I said. You lost it. Did I? He asked quietly. There was something in his tone that unsettled me. Not anger, not desperation. Confidence. Like he knew something I didn't. She's not a child anymore, Rachel, he continued. She can make her own decisions. That doesn't mean you get to walk back into her life and pretend nothing happened. I'm not pretending, he said. I'm trying to fix things. Fix, I repeated, disbelief flooding my voice. You think this is something you can just fix? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked past me toward the building entrance. And that's when I heard the door open behind me. Mom! I froze. I didn't need to turn around to know it was Emily. I knew that voice better than my own heartbeat. Slowly, I turned. She stood there, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her brows slightly furrowed in confusion. And then her eyes shifted past me. To him. Who is that? She asked. For a second, I couldn't speak. This was the moment I had spent years avoiding. The moment I had convinced myself would never come. Emily, I said carefully. Go inside. Well, talk later. But she didn't move. Instead, she took a small step forward, her gaze locked on David. There was curiosity there. And something else. Something I didn't like. Rachel, David said softly, his voice suddenly different, gentler, almost careful. It's okay? No, it wasn't. It was the opposite of okay. Emily, I said again more firmly now. Inside, please. But she shook her head, her attention still fixed on him. I asked you something, she said. Who is he? David took a step forward. Not too close, not threatening, just enough. My name is David, he said, and I've been waiting a long time to meet you. I felt my heart drop straight to the ground. Don't, I warned, my voice low. But it was too late. Emily's eyes widened slightly. There was a shift in her expression, a connection forming before I could stop it. Meet me, she repeated slowly. Why? He looked at her, and for a brief second, I saw something that almost looked real in his eyes. Regret, or at least a convincing version of it. Because he said gently, I'm your father. The silence that followed felt like it stretched forever. Emily didn't move, didn't speak. She just stood there, staring at him. And then slowly, she looked at me. I saw it happen. The moment everything changed. The doubt, the confusion, the beginning of questions I wasn't ready to answer. You told me, she said, her voice quieter. Now you told me he left. But the words got stuck in my throat. Because the truth wasn't simple. And I had spent 15 years making sure she never had to face it. Now standing between the two of them, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't just about him coming back. This was about everything I had chosen not to say. And for the first time, I could feel it slipping out of my control. "I think," David said softly, breaking the silence. "She deserves to hear the full story." I closed my eyes for a brief second, because I knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just back. He was setting the stage, and Emily was already starting to listen. From that day forward, nothing felt the same. At first, Emily didn't say much. She didn't explode, didn't accuse, didn't cry. And somehow, that silence felt heavier than anything else. She just watched me, carefully, quietly, like she was seeing me for the first time and trying to decide if she liked what she saw. The first change was subtle. "Hey, Mom," she said one evening, standing in the kitchen doorway while I was chopping vegetables. "Can I go out tomorrow?" "Of course," I replied without thinking. "Where are you going?" She hesitated. "Just for a second. With David." She didn't say Dad. Not yet. But she didn't look at me when she said his name either. The knife in my hand paused mid-cut. "No," I said, my voice calm, but firm. She frowned. "Why not?" "Because I don't think that's a good idea." "That's not a reason, Mom." I turned to face her, forcing myself to stay composed. "He just showed up after 15 years, Emily. You don't know him." She crossed her arms. "Maybe I want to." There it was, the first crack. You can't build a relationship with someone based on a single conversation, I said gently. "It takes time." She gave a small, almost sarcastic laugh. "Yeah, well, maybe if you hadn't kept him away all this time, I would have had that time." The words hit harder than I expected. I started, but stopped myself. I couldn't say it. Not like this. Not yet. Emily shook her head, clearly frustrated. "You know what? Forget it." And just like that, she turned and walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of her moving around in the next room, wondering how everything had unraveled so quickly. I had known this moment might come someday. I just hadn't expected it to come like this. Fast, sudden, out of my control. The next day, I came home from work earlier than usual. I told myself it was because my shift ended sooner. But the truth was, I needed to make sure she was okay, that he hadn't already gotten too far into her head. When I opened the apartment door, I immediately knew something was different. There was laughter, Emily's laughter, and another voice, his. I froze in the doorway, my hand still on the knob. For a moment, I just stood there listening. It sounded normal. Too normal. Like two people who had known each other for years. Not strangers trying to reconnect after a lifetime apart. I stepped inside slowly. They were sitting at the kitchen table. Emily leaning forward, animated, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. David sitting across from seen in weeks. David sitting across from her, relaxed, confident, completely at ease. Like he belonged there. Like this was his home. "Mom," Emily said when she noticed me. "You're back early." Her tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. It was her, relaxed, confident, completely at ease. Like he belonged there. Like this was his home. "Mom," Emily said when she noticed me. "You're back early." Her tone wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. It was neutral, which somehow hurt more. "What is he doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. David stood up calmly. I hope you don't mind. Emily invited me in. I do mind, I said immediately. Emily's expression tightened. Mom? No, I cut in. We talked about this. No, you talked, she shot back. I didn't agree to anything. I felt my chest tighten. Emily, this isn't safe. That word safe hung in the air. David's eyes flickered just for a second, but Emily caught it. What does that even mean? She demanded. He's my father. I shook my head. You don't understand. Then explain it. She snapped. The room went silent, because that was the one thing I couldn't do, not without breaking everything I had worked so hard to protect. I can't, I said quietly. Her face changed. That was the moment, the exact moment I saw it happen, the shift from confusion to doubt. To me, she asked, her voice trembling slightly. You can't explain it to me. It's complicated, I said. No, it's not, she replied. You just don't want to. That's not true. Then what is it? She pressed. Because right now it looks like you're just making excuses. David stepped forward slightly. Emily, maybe we should... No, she said, raising a hand to stop him. I want to hear this. She looked at me again, her eyes searching mine. Did you lie to me? The question felt like a punch to the chest. No, I said immediately. Then why won't you tell me the truth? Because the truth could destroy you. Because I promised you'd never have to carry it. Because I thought silence would protect you. But none of those answers could leave my mouth. So instead, I stayed quiet. And that silence said more than anything else I could have said. Emily let out a small, bitter laugh. Wow, she said, shaking her head. I can't believe this. It is not what you think. I tried again. Then what is it? She asked, her voice rising. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me my whole life. I haven't. You told me he left, she continued, cutting me off. You told me he didn't care about us. I swallowed hard. Emily. And now he's here, she said, gesturing toward David. And he's telling me a completely different story. Of course he was. That was exactly what he wanted. And you won't even defend yourself, she added. Because I couldn't. Because defending myself meant exposing him, and exposing him meant exposing everything. I'm trying to protect you, I said softly. She stared at me, and for the first time in her life, she didn't believe me. From what? She asked. I opened my mouth and closed it again, because my mouth, and closed it again, because here was no way to answer that without breaking the promise I had made all those years ago. Emily's expression hardened. You know what she said quietly. Maybe I don't need protection. Emily, here was no way to answer that without breaking the promise I had made all those years ago. Emily's expression hardened. You know what? She said quietly. Maybe I don't need protection, Emily. Maybe I just need the truth, she continued. And if you're not going to give it to me, maybe he will. The words landed exactly where David wanted them to. I saw it in his eyes, that quiet satisfaction, that careful, calculated patience. He didn't need to argue. He didn't need to push. He just needed to wait and let me destroy myself with silence. I think, he said gently, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder, you deserve to hear both sides. Emily nodded. And just like that, she stepped closer to him. Not physically, but emotionally. And I felt it, the distance between us growing wider, sharper, more permanent. For 15 years, I had protected her from the truth. Now that same truth was turning her against me, and I was running out of time to stop it. It didn't take long for David to rewrite the past. Not all at once. That would have been too obvious, too easy to question. Instead, he did it slowly, carefully, layer by layer, like someone painting over an old picture, until the original image disappeared completely. And Emily, she let him. At first, it was just small comments, little things slipped into conversation that I almost didn't notice. David said you used to argue a lot, she mentioned casually one evening, scrolling through her phone while I washed dishes. I froze for a second, then forced myself to keep moving. Every couple argues sometimes, I replied. Yeah, she said, not looking up. But he said it wasn't just sometimes. I didn't answer, because I knew exactly where this was going. A few days later, it was something else. He told me he tried to stay. She said, her voice quieter this time, that he wanted to be part of my life. The plate in my hands slipped slightly, clinking against the sink. That's not a few days later, it was something else. He told me he tried to stay, she said, her voice quieter this time, that he wanted to be part of my life. The plate in my hands slipped slightly, clinking against the sink. That's not... I started, then stopped myself again. Emily looked up at me, her eyes sharp. Not what she asked. I swallowed, not the whole story. She stared at me for a long moment. Then tell me the whole story. And there it was again. That same question. That same impossible choice. I turned away, focusing on the dishes, on anything that would keep me from having to face her directly. It's complicated, Emily. No, she said, standing up now. It's really not. Her voice was firmer than before, less uncertain, more convinced. He said you kicked him out, she continued, that you didn't want him around. My chest tightened. He said you told him he wasn't good enough, she added, that you pushed him away. I closed my eyes for a brief second, because I could hear it. Not just the words, but the way she was starting to believe them. That's not what happened, I said quietly. Then what did happen? She demanded. I turned to face her, and for a moment, I almost told her. I almost let everything come out, all the fear, all the truth, all the things I had buried for 15 years. But then I saw her, really saw her. The way her hands were clenched at her sides, the way her eyes were searching mine, desperate for something she could understand. And I knew, once I said it, there was no taking it back. Once she knew, she could never unknow it. I can't, I said again. Her expression fell. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was disappointment. Of course you can't, she said softly. That's not fair, I replied. Fair, she repeated, letting out a small, bitter laugh. You want to talk about fair? She shook her head. You let me grow up thinking my father didn't care about me, she said. Do you have any idea what that felt like? My throat tightened. You think I didn't wonder why he never called? She continued. Why he never showed up to anything? Why it was always just you and me? I did what I thought was best. No, she cut in. You did what was easiest. The words hit like a slap. That's not true, I said, my voice shaking now. Then prove it, she said. I opened my mouth, and once again, nothing came out. Emily stared at me for a few seconds, waiting, hoping. And when I still didn't say anything, something in her changed. Something closed. You know what she said finally? I'm done asking. She grabbed her jacket from the chair. "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "To see someone who actually answers my questions," she replied. "Emily, I'll be back later," she said, already heading for the door. "Emily, please," I called after her. "Just don't go alone." She paused for a second, her hand on the doorknob. Then she looked back at me, and the look in her eyes. It wasn't anger. Not anymore. It was worse. It was distance. "I won't be alone," she said. And then she walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click, but it felt louder than anything I had ever heard. I stood there in the silence, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I knew exactly where she was going, and I knew exactly what he was going to do. That night, I sat in the living room, waiting. Every minute felt like an hour. Every sound from the hallway made my heart jump. When she finally came back, it was late. Later than she had ever stayed out before. She walked in quietly, like she didn't want to wake me, even though she could see I was sitting right there. "Emily," I said, standing up. She didn't look at me. "Did you have fun?" I asked carefully. She shrugged, setting her bag down. "It was interesting." Interesting. That word made my stomach twist. "What did you talk about?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she looked at me, and this time there was no softness left in her eyes. "Everything you wouldn't tell me," she said. My chest tightened. "Emily, you have to understand." "No," she said sharply. "You have to understand." She stepped closer, her voice steady but cold. "He told me how you treated him," she continued. "How you controlled everything. How you wouldn't let him be part of my life. That's not... He said you made him feel like he didn't matter. He told me how you treated him," she continued. "How you controlled everything. How you wouldn't let him be part of my life. That's not... He said you made him feel like he didn't matter," she added. "Like he was nothing." I shook my head, my hands trembling slightly. "He's lying." "Is he?" she asked. "Yes." "Then prove it." The same impossible demand, the same silence from me, and this time it cost me more. Emily let out a slow breath, shaking her head. "I don't even recognize you right now," she said. That hurt more than anything else. "I'm still your mother," I said. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she said something I will never forget. "Yeah," she replied quietly, "but I don't know if I can trust you anymore." The words hung in the air between us, heavy, final. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just losing control of the situation, I was losing my daughter. And the worst part, I had helped make it happen. By choosing silence, by choosing protection over truth. And now, David didn't have to fight me at all, because Emily was already starting to take his side. The next time Emily confronted me, it wasn't in the kitchen. It wasn't calm. And it wasn't quiet. It happened 3 days later, and I knew something was wrong the moment she walked through the door. She didn't say hello, didn't take off her shoes, didn't even look at me at first. She just stood there in the living room, her jaw tight, her eyes red like she had either been crying or holding it back for too long. "Emily," I said carefully. "What's wrong?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What's wrong?" she repeated. "You really want to ask me that?" My stomach dropped. "Did something happen?" I asked, stepping closer. "Oh, something definitely happened," she said finally, looking at me. I found out the truth. My heart skipped a beat. What truth, I asked, though I already had a terrible feeling I knew. She walked toward me slowly, each step deliberate. The truth about you, she said. I felt my hands start to tremble. Emily. Listen. No. She cut me off sharply. You listen. Her voice cracked just slightly, but it wasn't weakness. It was anger mixed with something deeper. Something like betrayal. He showed me messages, she continued, old emails, things you wrote to him. My mind raced. Emails? What emails? I don't know what you're talking about, I said. Don't lie to me, she snapped, her voice rising suddenly. I flinched, because I had never heard her speak to me like that before. Emily, I'm not lying. You told him he wasn't welcome in our lives, she said, her voice shaking now. You told him to stay away from me. I stared at her, because that part was true, but not for the reason she thought. That's not the whole story, I said, my voice low. Then tell me the whole story, she shouted. The room fell silent after that, the kind of silence that presses in on you from all sides. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment, the one I had been avoiding for 15 years. I could tell her. I could finally say everything. Explain why I sent those emails. Explain what he had done. Explain why I had no choice. But the words, they still wouldn't come, because once I said them, I couldn't protect her anymore. I can't, I whispered. Emily stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Unbelievable, she said under her breath. I'm trying to protect you. I said again, even though I knew how weak it sounded now. From what? She demanded. From my own father. Yes, I said louder than I intended. The word echoed in the room, and for a second, everything froze. Emily blinked, surprised by my reaction, but then her expression hardened again. No, she said, shaking her head. That's not it. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, she interrupted. He's been nothing but kind to me. Of course he had. That was exactly what he wanted. He listens, she continued. He answers my questions. He doesn't shut me out. Each word felt like a blade. And you, she added, you just keep secrets. I took a shaky breath. Emily, there are always things, she said bitterly. Excuses, half answers, silence. I stepped closer to her. I'm your mother, I said. Everything I've ever done has been for you. Then why does it feel like you've been lying to me my whole life? She asked. The question hit harder than anything else she had said. Because I didn't have a clean answer. Because the truth wasn't simple. I didn't lie, I said quietly. You just didn't tell me the truth, she replied. And that was worse. I felt something inside me crack. Emily, please, I said, my voice breaking now. Just trust me. She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see it, the hesitation, the part of her that still wanted to believe me, the little girl who used to call me her hero. But then it faded, replaced by doubt. No, she said softly. I don't think I can. The words felt like the ground disappearing beneath my feet. Emily, I gave you so many chances, she continued. I asked you over and over again to just be honest with me. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. You chose not to, she said. That's not fair, I whispered. Fair, she repeated. You keep saying that, but you don't even see what you've done. She took a step back. Creating distance. Real distance. Do you have any idea what it feels like to find out your entire childhood might not be what you thought it was? She asked. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't answer. Because I did know. I had lived it. But she didn't know that, and I couldn't tell her why. I'm not a kid anymore, Mom, she said. I deserve to know the truth. You do, I said, but not like this. Then how? She challenged. Again, no answer. She let out a slow breath, wiping at her eyes. I'm tired, she said. Emily, I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one trying to understand what happened, she continued. I'm tired of feeling like I'm being kept in the dark. Her voice softened slightly, but most of all, I'm tired of not knowing who to believe. My heart sank, because I knew the answer to that question, and it wasn't me. She looked at me one last time, and this time there was something final in her eyes. Until you're ready to tell me everything, she said quietly, I don't think we have anything left to talk about. The words hung in the air. Heavy. Permanent. Emily, please don't do this, I said, stepping toward her. But she shook her head. No, she said. You already did. And then she turned, walked past me, and went into her room, closing the door behind her. Not slamming it, not making a scene, just closing it. And somehow that hurt more. I stood there in the silence, staring at that closed door, feeling the weight of everything I hadn't said, everything I couldn't say. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. This wasn't just confusion. This was a breaking point. And if I didn't find a way to stop it soon, I was going to lose her completely. That night, I sat alone in the dark. I didn't turn on the lights, didn't turn on the TV, didn't even move from the chair by the window. I just sat there, listening to the silence in my own home, feeling it press against me like something alive. Emily hadn't come out of her room since our argument. Not for dinner, not for water, not even to say goodnight. And I didn't knock, because I knew if I did, it would only make things worse. There's a kind of pain that comes from being misunderstood. And then there's a deeper kind, the kind that comes from knowing you could fix it, but choosing not to. That was where I was now, stuck between truth and protection, between honesty and fear. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes, and just like that, the past came rushing in. 15 years ago. Back when everything was still raw. Back when I hadn't learned how to pretend it didn't exist. I remember sitting in a different room. Not this apartment. Not this life. A small office with cold lighting and beige walls that made everything feel heavier than it already was. A police officer sat across from me, a social worker beside him, and my hands, they wouldn't stop shaking. Rachel, the officer, said gently, "We need to document everything that happened." I nodded, but I couldn't speak, because if I said it out loud, it would become real in a way I wasn't ready for. "He can't come back," the social worker added. "Not after this. I knew that. I had known it the moment it happened. But knowing something and accepting it are two very different things." "What about my daughter?" I asked, finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "She's safe," the officer said. "That's what matters." Safe. That word had become everything to me. It was the reason I made every decision that followed, the reason I signed every paper, the reason I agreed to things that felt impossible at the time. There will be conditions, the social worker continued. If you want to move forward without a prolonged case, there are things that cannot be disclosed. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? For her protection, she said. Some details must remain sealed, especially from the child. I looked down at my hands, at the way they trembled. Will he be able to contact her? I asked. No, the officer said firmly. Not without violating the agreement. And if he does, there will be consequences. I let out a shaky breath. Because that was what I needed to hear. That she would be safe. That he wouldn't come back. That this part of our lives could be over. There's one more thing, the social worker said carefully. I looked up. You'll need to maintain distance, she continued. No communication, no engagement. If he reaches out, you do not respond. I nodded slowly. I understand. And Rachel, she added, her tone softening, you need to think about how much your daughter should know. My chest tightened. She's too young to understand something like this, she said. It could cause long-term psychological harm. I knew that too. I had seen it in my work. Children carrying burdens they were never meant to carry. Memories that twisted into fear, into anxiety, into something that never really left them. I won't tell her, I said quietly. Are you sure? The officer asked. Yes, I replied more firmly now. I'll protect her. The social worker nodded. Then you need to be consistent, she said. No mixed messages. No party-out truths. If you decide to shield her, are you sure? The officer asked. Yes, I replied more firmly now. I'll protect her. The social worker nodded. Then you need to be consistent, she said. No mixed messages. No partial truths. If you decide to shield her, you have to fully commit to that choice. I swallowed hard, because I knew what that meant. It meant silence. It meant carrying the truth alone. It meant letting her believe something that wasn't entirely accurate for the sake of keeping her safe. I understand, I said again. And in that moment, I made a promise. Not just to them, but to myself, to my daughter. I would protect her, no matter what it cost me. Even if it meant she might one day hate me for it. Even if it meant being misunderstood. Even if it meant standing alone. The memory faded slowly, and I opened my eyes again back in the present. Back in the quiet, dimly lit living room. The weight of that promise still sitting heavy on my chest. 15 years. 15 years of keeping that promise. Of holding everything in. Of choosing silence again and again, even when it hurt. And now, that silence was coming back to destroy everything. I rubbed my hands together, trying to steady them. Because, for the first time, I was starting to question myself. Had I done the right thing? Had I really protected her? Or had I just delayed the moment when everything would fall apart? A soft sound pulled me from my thoughts. A door opening. I looked up. Emily stood in the hallway. She looked tired, worn down, like she hadn't slept either. For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just stood there, looking at each other. I couldn't sleep, she said finally. Me neither, I replied. She hesitated, then slowly she walked into the living room. Not close, but closer than before. I've been thinking, she said. My heart tightened. About what? I asked carefully. About everything, she replied. She sat down on the edge of the couch, her hands clasped together. I don't understand why you won't tell me the truth, she said. I took a deep breath. Because it's not something you should have to carry. I answered honestly. She looked up at me, frustration flashing across her face. That's not your decision to make anymore, she said. Maybe she was right. Maybe that was the part I had been refusing to accept. She wasn't 5 years old anymore. She wasn't the little girl I had been trying to protect. She was grown, and she wanted answers. I just need to know, she continued, her voice softer now. Why would you send those emails? Why would you keep him away? I closed my eyes briefly, because the answer was right there, sitting on the edge of my tongue, heavy, painful, dangerous. But still, I hesitated, and that hesitation, it cost me again. Emily let out a quiet sigh. Okay, she said, standing up. Emily. No, she said, shaking her head. I get it now. My chest tightened. Get what? That you're never going to tell me, she replied. That's not... And that means, she continued, her voice steady, now I'm going to have to find out another way. My heart skipped. What do you mean? She looked at me, and this time there was no hesitation at all. I'm going to trust him, she said. The words hit like a shockwave. Emily, no. He's the only one who's actually telling me anything, she said. The only one who's not hiding behind silence. He's lying to you, I said desperately. Maybe, she replied. But at least he's saying something. I felt the ground shift beneath me, because I could see it clearly now. She had made her choice, and it wasn't me. I hope, she added quietly, that one day you'll be honest with me. And then she turned, walked back down the hallway, and closed her door again, leaving me alone with the truth I had protected for so long, and the realization that it might be the very thing that destroys us. The worst part wasn't the arguments. It wasn't the accusations. It wasn't even the look in Emily's eyes when she stopped believing me. The worst part was watching her slowly become someone I couldn't reach anymore. Days passed, and the distance between us grew in ways I didn't know how to fix. She started coming home later. Sometimes she wouldn't come home at all until well past midnight. And every time I asked where she had been, I already knew the answer. With him, she would say, not even trying to soften it, not even trying to hide it. David didn't just re-enter her life, he took space in it, quickly, completely, like he had been waiting for this moment. One evening I found her sitting at the kitchen table again. But this time, I was the one who felt like the outsider. She had papers spread out in front of her. Old documents, printouts, things I hadn't seen in years. My heart dropped the moment I recognized one of them. A hospital record. Where did you get those? I asked, my voice tight. She didn't look up. David gave them to me, she said calmly. Of course he did. I stepped closer, my chest tightening with every inch. Emily, you shouldn't be looking at those. Why not? She asked, finally lifting her gaze to meet mine. Because they don't fit your version of the story, that's not. These are from 15 years ago. She continued tapping the paper. The same time he left. I felt my pulse spike. You've been holding on to all of this, she added. Why? I swallowed hard. Because the answer was simple. Too simple. Because it matters, I said. To who she challenged? To you, I replied. She shook her head slowly. No, she said. If it really mattered to me, you would have told me about it. I didn't respond, because once again, I had no way to explain without crossing a line I had sworn never to cross. Emily picked up one of the papers and held it up. "This says there was an incident," she said. "At home." My breath caught. "There was a report filed," she continued. "But it doesn't say exactly what happened." I closed my eyes briefly, because I knew why, because I had made sure of it. "That's because not everything needs to be written down," I said quietly. "Or maybe," she shot back, "because you made sure it wasn't." I looked at her stunned. "You think I would do that?" I asked. "I don't know what to think anymore," she replied. Her honesty cut deeper than anything else. "I'm trying to understand," she said, her voice softer now. "But every time I get close to the truth, you shut me out." "I'm not shutting you out," I said. "I'm protecting you." She let out a frustrated breath. "Stop saying that," she snapped. "It doesn't make sense." "It will," I insisted. "One day it will." When she demanded, "When I'm 50. When it's too late to matter." Her words echoed in the room, and for a second, I felt something shift inside me. A crack, a hesitation. Because she wasn't wrong. Time didn't stop, and the truth didn't wait forever. But still, I couldn't say it. Not like this. Not when she was already so angry, so ready to believe the worst. "You're asking me to trust you," she said. "But you're giving me nothing to hold on to." I stepped closer. "Emily, please," I said. "Just give me a little more time." For what she asked, for things to be handled the right way. She stared at me, and then she said something that made my heart sink even deeper. "There is no right way anymore," she said. "There's just the truth, and whatever you're hiding." I shook my head. "You think I'm hiding something from you," I said. "But what I'm really doing is carrying something for you." She frowned slightly. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said carefully, "that sometimes loving someone means taking on the burden so they don't have to." She looked at me for a long moment, and then she shook her head. "That sounds nice," she said, "but it also sounds like an excuse." I felt the words hit and settle, because maybe to her that's exactly what it looked like. Silence, avoidance, secrets, all disguised as protection. "I talked to him again today," she added suddenly. My stomach twisted. "What did he say?" I asked. She hesitated, then she spoke. "He said you were scared of the truth coming out," she said. I let out a slow breath. "Of course he did." "He said that's why you kept him away," she continued. "Because you knew if I found out what really happened, I wouldn't look at you the same." The room felt colder. Because that part wasn't entirely wrong, but not in the way he meant. "He's twisting things I said." "Then untwist them," she replied immediately. I stayed silent, and that silence answered her again. Emily nodded slowly, like something had just been confirmed for her. "Okay," she said quietly. "Emily." "No," she said, raising a hand. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay. Not even close. "I think I understand now," she added. My chest tightened. "Understand what?" "That you're not going to tell me," she said. "No matter what." I didn't respond, because she was right, and we both knew it. She gathered the papers in front of her and stacked them neatly. "I'm going to find out on my own," she said. My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she replied, looking straight at me. "I'm done waiting for you." A chill ran through me. because I knew exactly what that meant. She was going to dig deeper, ask more questions, push harder. And David, he would be right there guiding her, feeding her just enough truth mixed with just enough lies to make her believe everything he wanted her to believe. "Emily, please don't do this," I said, my voice breaking. She paused for just a second, and I saw it again. That hesitation, that flicker of doubt. But then it disappeared. "I already am," she said. And with that, she picked up her bag, walked past me, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "To get answers," she replied. "From him." She didn't answer, because she didn't have to. The door closed behind her, and I stood there frozen, because I knew something now that I hadn't fully accepted before. This wasn't just about misunderstanding. This wasn't just about trust. This was about something much bigger. Something I had kept hidden for years. Something that if it came out the wrong way, wouldn't just change how Emily saw me. It would change everything. And as I stood there alone in the silence, I realized something that made my heart sink. I wasn't just running out of time. I might have already run out. Things escalated faster than I expected, and that terrified me, because for years I had controlled the pace of the truth. What Emily knew, what she didn't know, what she believed. But now that control was gone, and David was moving quickly, too quickly. The next time I saw him, it wasn't by accident. It was deliberate, calculated. He came to my workplace. I had just finished checking a patient's chart when I heard my name. "Rachel?" I turned, and there he was standing in the hallway outside the nurse's station, dressed neatly, looking completely out of place in a hospital. But somehow, also completely at ease. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "I think we need to talk," he said calmly. "No," I replied immediately. "We don't." He stepped closer just enough to make it uncomfortable. "I think we do," he repeated, "because this situation is getting complicated." I crossed my arms. "You mean the situation you created?" A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I didn't create anything," he said. "I just showed up and started manipulating my daughter." His expression didn't change. "That's a strong accusation," he said. "It's the truth." He tilted his head slightly, studying me. "Is it?" he asked. "Because from what I can tell, she's just asking questions you refuse to answer." My chest tightened. "You know exactly why I haven't answered them." "Do I?" he replied. "Or is that just what you keep telling yourself?" I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Stay away from her." He let out a quiet breath, almost like he had expected that. "I can't do that," he said. "You can," I insisted, "and you will." "No," he said calmly. "I won't." The certainty in his voice made my stomach drop. "She's my daughter too, Rachel," he continued. "You don't get to make that decision on your own anymore. I made that decision 15 years ago." I snapped, "For a reason." "Then maybe it's time you explain that reason," he said. I clenched my jaw. "You don't get to use her as leverage," I said. "I'm not using her," he replied. "I'm giving her the truth." "No," I said sharply. "You're giving her your version of the truth." "And what's the alternative?" he asked. "Your silence?" The words hit exactly where he wanted them to. "You think you're protecting her?" He continued, his voice soft but cutting. "But all you're really doing is pushing her away." That's not true. Isn't it? Zah, he asked. I didn't answer, because part of me was starting to wonder the same thing. He took another step closer. You should see the way she looks at me, he said quietly. Like she finally has someone who's being honest with her. My hands clenched into fists. You're lying to her, I said. He smiled again. Then prove it. The same words, over and over again. And every time, I had no answer. That's what I thought, he said. I shook my head, trying to steady myself. What do you want? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Everything that's mine, he said. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, he said calmly, I'm not just here to reconnect. Of course he wasn't. I'm here to fix what you broke. He continued. I didn't break anything, I said. You took my family, he replied. No, I said firmly. You lost it. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not anger, something darker. Careful, he said quietly. You don't want to go down that road. I've already been down it, I replied. You just don't like how it ended. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then he spoke again. I've already filed the paperwork, he said. My heart stopped. What paperwork? He held my gaze. Legal, he said. You'll find out soon enough. A cold wave of panic rushed through me. You're taking this to court, I asked. I'm taking it where it needs to go, he replied. For what? I demanded. For the truth, he said. No, not the truth. His version of it. You think you can rewrite everything I asked. I don't have to rewrite anything, he said calmly. I just have to let people see what's already there. My mind raced. Court meant exposure. It meant records. It meant questions. And worst of all, it meant Emily. She's going to be involved, I said, my voice barely steady. She already is, he replied. No, I said. You're not dragging her into this. I'm not dragging her, he said. She's choosing to be part of it. My chest tightened, because I knew he was right. She wants to testify, he added. The words hit like a punch. What, I whispered. She wants to tell her side, he said, about how you kept me away, about what you did. My vision blurred for a second. No, I said, shaking my head. She doesn't understand. Then maybe you should have helped her understand, he interrupted. Silence fell between us. Heavy. Final. You did this, I said quietly. No, he replied. You did. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just about Emily anymore. This wasn't just about our past. This was a setup, a carefully constructed situation where I would be forced to either stay silent or expose everything. And either way, I would lose. If you really cared about her, he said softly, you'd tell her the truth before someone else does. I stared at him, because for the first time, that felt less like a threat and more like a warning, and that terrified me even more. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving me standing there, frozen, alone, and suddenly running out of time, because now it wasn't just Emily choosing sides. It was the law, and soon everything I had buried was going to come out. The court date came faster than I was ready for. I barely remember the days leading up to it. Everything blurred together: work, sleepless nights, unanswered messages sitting on my phone, meals left untouched. And Emily, she barely spoke to me at all. We lived in the same apartment, but it felt like we were on opposite sides of a wall that kept growing thicker every day. The only time she talked was when it was necessary. Short answers, no eye contact, no warmth. And every time she left the apartment, I knew exactly where she was going. I stopped asking, because I already knew the answer. And I wasn't sure I could handle hearing it out loud anymore. The morning of the hearing, I woke up before sunrise, not because I wanted to, but because I hadn't really slept. The sky outside was still dark, the city quiet, in that rare way it only is for a few hours each day. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, staring at nothing, trying to steady the storm inside my chest. This was it. The moment everything changed. No more silence. No more control. No more hiding. I got dressed slowly, choosing something simple. A navy blouse, black slacks. Nothing that drew attention. I didn't want attention. I wanted invisibility, but I knew I wasn't going to get it. When I stepped into the hallway, Emily was already there, standing by the door, ready to leave. She looked different, composed, cold, like she had already made peace with whatever was about to happen. "Are you ready?" I asked softly. She nodded. "That's all I asked," my voice barely steady. "No questions?" "No anything." She shook her head. "I think I've asked enough questions," she said. And just like that, we walked out together. Not as mother and daughter, but as two people heading into the same place for very different reasons. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not physically, emotionally, like the air itself carried tension. David was already there when we arrived. Of course he was. Sitting at the table with his lawyer dressed perfectly, looking calm, confident, prepared. When his eyes met mine, he didn't smile. He didn't need to. The look alone said everything. "You're out of time." I forced myself to look away. Emily walked past me without hesitation and took a seat beside him. That hurt more than anything else. More than the accusations. More than the silence. Seeing her choose where to sit and it not being next to me. I sat at my own table, alone. My lawyer, Michael Grant, arrived moments later. He gave me a brief nod, setting down his files. "Rachel," he said quietly, "we're going to get through this." I wanted to believe him, but I wasn't sure I did. "Is she really going to testify?" I asked, my voice low. He glanced toward Emily. "Yes," he said. My chest tightened. "And the testimony?" I asked. He hesitated. "It's what we expected," he replied carefully, meaning she was going to speak against me. I closed my eyes for a second, steadying myself. "Do we still have it?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes," he said. "But once we use it, there's no going back." I knew that. That was the whole problem. Once the truth came out, it wouldn't just change things. It would break them. The judge entered the room and everyone stood. "Please be seated," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. The proceedings began. Formalities, statements, words that sounded distant like they belonged to someone else's life. Until finally, "Call your first witness," the judge said. David's lawyer stood. "We call Emily Carter." My heart stopped. I watched as Emily stood up, walked forward, took the stand. Every step felt heavier than the last. She raised her hand, swore to tell the truth. And then she looked at me, just for a second, and in her eyes there was nothing left. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. State your name for the record, the lawyer said. Emily Carter, she replied. Emily, he continued, can you tell us about your relationship with your mother? She took a breath, and then she spoke. She's always been controlling, she said. The words hit like a shock. She made all the decisions, Emily continued. About everything. About my life. About my father. I felt my hands start to shake. Did you have a relationship with your father growing up? The lawyer asked. No, she said, because she didn't allow it. My chest tightened. Objection, Michael said calmly. Speculation? Sustained. The judge replied. Rephrase, Emily, the lawyer said, adjusting slightly. Did your mother ever explain why your father wasn't part of your life? No, she said. She just said he left, that he didn't care. I swallowed hard. Did you believe that he asked? I did, she said. For a long time. And now Emily hesitated. Just for a second. And I saw it. That flicker. That tiny piece of uncertainty that still remained. But then it disappeared. Now I think I was lied to, she said. The words landed hard. Final. Irreversible. Can you explain why you believe that the lawyer asked? Emily nodded. Because when I met my father, she said he told me a completely different story. Of course he did. He said he tried to stay. She continued, that he wanted to be part of my life? But she pushed him away. I closed my eyes, because I couldn't look at her anymore. Did you ever ask your mother about this? The lawyer asked. Yes, she said, many times. And what was her response? Emily's voice dropped slightly. She refused to explain. She said, she just kept saying she was protecting me. A few people in the courtroom shifted. Murmurs. Judgment. I could feel it. Did that explanation satisfy you? He asked. No, she said. Why not? Because it didn't make sense, she replied. And because if you really love someone, you don't keep them in the dark. The words cut deep. Because once she had believed I was her hero. Now I was the villain in her story. The lawyer nodded. No further questions. The judge looked toward our side. Cross-examination, Michael stood slowly, and for a moment everything felt suspended, balanced on the edge of something irreversible. Emily, he said gently, I just have a few questions. She nodded. Do you love your mother? He asked. The question caught her off guard. She hesitated. Yes. Has she taken care of you your whole life? Yes. Provided for you, supported you. Yes. He paused. And yet you believe she deliberately kept your father away without reason? Emily hesitated again. Yes, she said, though her voice wasn't as steady this time. Michael nodded slowly. No further questions. The judge turned toward us. Does the defense wish to call a witness? Michael looked at me, and I knew. This was the moment, the point of no return. He stood. Yes, Your Honor, he said. The defense requests to present the full testimony. The room went silent, completely silent. I felt my heart pound in my chest, because I knew exactly what that meant. Everything I had hidden, everything I had protected her from, was about to come out. And there was no stopping it now. I didn't breathe. Not when Michael said the words. Not when the judge nodded. Not even when I felt every single pair of eyes in that courtroom shift toward me, toward the table, toward the truth I had kept buried for 15 years. Proceed, Judge Harrison said. Michael opened the folder slowly, deliberately, like he understood the weight of what he was about to do. Your Honor, he began, what we are about to present is a sealed record from 15 years ago. It includes police reports, medical documentation, and sworn statements that were never disclosed due to a protective agreement involving a minor. A murmur moved through the room. I felt Emily's presence before I looked at her, and when I finally did, she was staring at Michael. Not at me, not at David, at the folder, waiting, curious, unprepared. My chest tightened, because this was it. There was no more protecting her, no more silence, no more distance between her and the truth. Permission to read, Michael said. Granted, the judge replied. Michael turned a page and began. Case file dated October 14th, 15 years prior. Responding officers report a domestic disturbance at a private residence. My ears rang because even hearing the words again, after all this time, still hurt. Upon arrival, he continued, officers observed signs of forced entry within the home. Furniture overturned, broken glass, evidence of physical altercation. I saw Emily shift slightly in her seat, confusion flickering across her face. This is ridiculous, David's lawyer said. What relevance? Let him continue, the judge interrupted. Michael didn't pause. Primary witness, Rachel Price, he read, states that subject identified as David Carter entered the residence in an agitated state. The room went still, and for the first time, Emily turned toward me, her expression uncertain. This is false, David said suddenly, but his voice didn't carry the same calm confidence it had before. It was tighter now, sharper. Further report indicates Michael continued that the subject was under the influence and displayed aggressive behavior. Emily's brows furrowed. What is this? She whispered more to herself than anyone else. I felt my heart crack. Because I had never wanted her to hear this. Not like this. Not here. According to medical records, Michael, when on minor child, was present at the scene and required evaluation due to emotional distress and proximity to physical danger. Emily froze. Her entire body stilled. Minor child, she repeated quietly. Michael didn't stop. Hospital documentation confirms the child was treated for shock. No physical injuries reported, but emotional trauma noted. Emily turned to me fully now. What is he talking about? She asked. I couldn't answer. Because the answer was already being read aloud. Additional statement from attending physician Michael said, turning another page, recommends immediate removal of subject from residence and restricted access to the child. David stood up suddenly. This is out of context, he said. You're twisting. Sit down, Mr. Carter, the judge said firmly. David hesitated, then slowly sat. But I saw it. The change, the cracks in his control. Michael continued. Signed agreement, he read, indicates that for the safety and well-being of the minor subject is to have no contact unless approved under legal supervision. Emily's face had gone pale. Her eyes moved between me and the papers like she was trying to piece something together that didn't make sense. No contact, she whispered. That's not, David started. Mr. Carter, the judge warned. Michael turned another page. Final note. He said, his voice steady, indicates that Rachel Price agreed to maintain silence regarding the details of the incident to prevent long-term psychological harm to the minor. Silence. Complete silence. The kind that presses down on you until you can't breathe. Emily looked at me. Really looked at me. And this time, She wasn't seeing the version of me she had built in her mind over the past few weeks. She was seeing something else, something broken, something real. "You knew?" she asked, her voice trembling. I swallowed. "Yes," I said softly. "You knew all of this and you didn't tell me," she continued. "I couldn't," I said. "Why, she demanded." The question hit harder now, because now she had context. Now she understood just enough to ask the right question. "Because you were there," I said, her breath caught. "What?" "You were there, Emily." Because now she had context. Now she understood just enough to ask the right question. "Because you were there," I said. Her breath caught. "What?" "You were there, Emily," I repeated. "You were 5 years old." Her eyes widened. No, I would remember. You don't," I said gently, "because I made sure you didn't have to." The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. "I thought if I kept it from you, you could grow up without carrying it," I continued, my voice shaking now. "Without being afraid, without having those memories follow you. I thought if I kept it from you, you could grow up without carrying it." I continued, my voice shaking now. "Without being afraid, without having those memories follow you." Emily's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She looked at David, slowly, carefully, like she was seeing him for the first time. "That's not what happened," he said quickly. "Rachel is exaggerating." "Stop," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through everything. "Just stop." David froze, because for the first time, she wasn't looking at him with trust. She was looking at him with doubt. "Is it true?" she asked. He hesitated. Just for a second, and that was enough. "That's all I need to know," she said softly. My chest tightened, because I could see it now. The shift, the realization, the truth, finally breaking through everything he had built. "You let me believe she was the problem," Emily said, her voice trembling now. "You let me think she lied to me." "I didn't." "You did," she said. Tears filled her eyes. "And I believed you." The courtroom felt smaller, heavier, like everything inside it had shifted, and there was no going back. Emily turned back toward me, and this time there was something else in her eyes. Not anger, not distance, something deeper, something that hurt in a completely different way. "I'm sorry," she whispered. And just like that, everything I had held onto for 15 years started to break. The word sorry echoed in my ears long after Emily said it, not because it was loud, but because of everything it carried: regret, shock, pain, and something even deeper, something fragile: understanding. But it wasn't over. Not even close. The courtroom remained silent for only a moment before everything started moving again. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Does the defense have additional documentation to present?" "Yes, Your Honor," Michael replied. He didn't rush, didn't dramatize it. But I could feel it, the shift in the room, the weight of what was still coming. Because the report, the one he had just read, that wasn't even the full truth. It was only the beginning. Exhibit B, Michael said, placing another document forward, includes sworn testimony from the responding officer and a second witness present during the incident. David's lawyer stood again. "Objection! This is excessive." "Overruled," the judge said firmly. Continue. Michael nodded and began reading. Statement from Officer Daniels. Upon entering the residence, subject David Carter was restrained after displaying aggressive behavior toward Rachel Price. Emily's breath hitched softly. I heard it, even from across the room. Subject attempted to approach the minor child. Michael continued, despite verbal commands to stand down. Emily's eyes widened. What she whispered. My hands clenched together tightly in my lap. Because now, we were getting closer to the part I had tried hardest to protect her from. Additional note. Michael said, his voice steady but heavy, indicates that the child was found hiding in a confined space, showing signs of severe distress. Emily's face went pale. Hiding, she repeated, her voice barely audible. I couldn't look at her, because I knew what she was starting to realize. You were in the closet, I said quietly. The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room seemed to freeze. Emily turned to me slowly. No, she said, shaking her head. I don't remember that. I know I said. You're making this up, David said, suddenly, his voice sharp. She's trying to... Sit down, the judge snapped. David fell silent, but his composure was gone now. Completely. Michael continued. Statement from neighbor. He read. Reports hearing shouting, breaking objects, and a child crying prior to police arrival. Emily covered her mouth with her hand. No, she whispered again. This can't be real. It is, I said softly. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't low okay away from me. Why don't I remember Emily covered her mouth with her hand? No, she whispered again. This can't be real. It is, I said softly. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away from me. Why don't I remember? She asked. My throat tightened. Because you were 5, I said, and because I made sure you didn't have to. The words hung in the air, raw, unfiltered. And the hospital, she said slowly, her voice trembling. I was really there? Yes, and you never told me I couldn't, I said. Why not? She demanded, her voice rising now. I had a right to know. I wanted you to have a childhood without fear, I replied. Without that memory following you. So you just erased it? She asked. I tried to protect you from it, I said. Her eyes filled with tears. But it still happened, she said. Yes, I whispered. And now, hearing it like this. In a courtroom, she continued. Her voice broke. In front of strangers, I felt something inside me shatter. I never wanted it to happen this way, I said. Then why didn't you tell me before? She asked. Because I was afraid. Because I didn't want to see that look in your eyes. Because I thought I could keep it buried forever. But none of that mattered now. Because I thought silence would keep you safe, I said. Emily shook her head slowly. No, she said. It just made me blind. The words hit hard, because they were true. David suddenly stood up again. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice louder now. You're turning this into something it's not. Michael didn't even look at him. Your Honor, he said calmly, we have one final document. The judge nodded. Proceed. Michael opened the last page, and I knew. This was it. The piece that changed everything. The final statement, he said, is a signed agreement from both parties, acknowledging the severity of the incident and consenting to permanent separation for the safety of the minor. Emily's eyes moved quickly across the paper as Michael placed it forward. Her lips parted slightly. "His signature," she whispered. Then she looked at him. David didn't meet her eyes, and that said more than anything else. "You agreed to this?" she asked him. He hesitated. "It was complicated," he said. "No," she said, shaking her head. "It's not complicated." Her voice steadied. "It's clear." The room went completely still, because everyone could feel it, the shift, the moment everything changed. "You weren't kept away," Emily said. "You were removed." David opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. "And you let me believe it was her fault," she continued. Her voice didn't shake anymore. It was calm, controlled, and somehow that was more powerful. "You let me turn against her," she said. He stepped toward her slightly. "Emily." "I don't," she said, stepping back. The distance between them felt final, irreversible. "I trusted you," she said, "and you lied to me." The words landed hard, heavy, and there was no coming back from them. Emily turned toward me again, and this time she didn't hesitate. She walked across the room, past the tables, past the tension, and stopped right in front of me. "I'm so sorry," she said again, but this time there was no doubt. No confusion, only truth, and pain, and love. "I should have listened to you," she whispered. I shook my head, tears finally falling. "No," I said. "You deserve to know." She reached for my hand, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel alone. Behind us, the courtroom remained silent, but I could feel it. Everything had shifted. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same again. The word sorry didn't fix anything, but it changed everything. Because for the first time since all of this began, Emily wasn't standing on the other side of me. She was standing with me. And yet the pain didn't go away. If anything, it deepened. Because now she understood. And understanding comes with its own kind of weight. The courtroom slowly came back to life around us, voices murmuring, papers shifting, the quiet hum of people trying to process what they had just witnessed. But for me, everything narrowed down to one thing. Emily, her hand still holding mine, her fingers trembling slightly. "I don't understand how I forgot," she said softly. Her voice was different now. Not angry, not cold, just broken. I squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes the mind protects us," I said, "especially when we're too young to make sense of something that's scary." She shook her head slowly. "But I remember little things," she said, "random things from when I was that age." "I know," I replied, "but not everything stays. Some things get buried." She looked down at our hands. "And you carried it instead," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. "Yes," I said quietly. She swallowed hard. "All these years," she whispered. "You were dealing with that alone." "I wasn't alone," I said softly. "I had you." She looked up at me, tears filling her eyes again. "But I didn't know," she said. "You weren't supposed to," I replied. Her lips pressed together as she tried to hold herself together. And then she turned, slowly, deliberately, back toward David. He was still sitting at the table, but he didn't look the same anymore. The confidence was gone. The calm was gone. All that was left was something exposed, something smaller. "Why?" Emily asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the entire room. David looked up at her. "I already told you he started." "No," she cut him off. "Not your version." Silence fell again. "You knew what happened," she continued. "You signed those papers." He hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. "You let me believe she was lying," she said. "I didn't lie," he replied weakly. "I just didn't tell you everything." Emily let out a hollow laugh. "That's exactly what you accused her of," she said. The irony hung in the air. Heavy, unavoidable. "I was trying to reconnect with you," he said. "I didn't want to scare you." "By turning me against her," she shot back. "I didn't." "You did," she said firmly. For the first time, she sounded certain. Not confused, not torn, certain. "And I believed you," she added, her voice breaking slightly. "I trusted you." David looked at her, searching for something and opening a way back in. But there was nothing left. "You think this is all my fault?" he asked. Emily didn't answer immediately. She took a breath, then another, like she was steadying herself. "No," she said finally. "I think it's my fault too." That caught him off guard. "What?" he asked. "I chose to believe you without questioning anything," she said. "I chose to doubt her, even when she never gave me a reason to." Her voice softened. "I hurt her," she added. My chest tightened. "Emily." "No," she said, shaking her head slightly. "I need to say this." She looked at me again. "I said things I can't take back," she continued. "I called you a liar. I said you were selfish." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "And you still stayed quiet," she said. I stepped closer. Because I couldn't stand the distance anymore. "I stayed quiet because I didn't want to lose you," I said. Her eyes closed briefly. "But you almost did anyway," she whispered. "Yes," I admitted. "And I didn't even see it," she said. Her shoulders trembled slightly as she tried to hold herself together. "I thought I was fighting for the truth," she added, "but I was just running from it." I reached out and gently touched her arm. "You didn't know," I said. "I should have trusted you," she replied. "Trust takes time," I said. "And sometimes it gets tested." She let out a shaky breath. "I failed that test," she said. I shook my head. "No," I said. "We both did." She looked at me confused. "I should have told you sooner," I admitted. "I should have found a way." "You were trying to protect me," she said. "Yes," I replied, "but maybe I protected you for too long." She nodded slowly, and for the first time, there was no anger left between us. Only truth, only pain, and something new, something fragile, healing. Behind us, the judge cleared his throat slightly. "Given the evidence presented," he said, "this court finds no basis for the claims made against Rachel Price." A quiet wave moved through the room. Furthermore, he continued, "Mr. Carter's actions and omissions raise serious concerns regarding his credibility and intent." David's lawyer leaned toward him, whispering something urgently. But it didn't matter. The outcome was already clear. "This case is dismissed," the judge said. The sound of the gavel echoed sharply. Final, decisive, over. But for me, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. Because as the courtroom began to empty, as people gathered their things and moved toward the doors, Emily didn't move. She stayed right there, next to me. And when she finally spoke again, her voice was soft, careful, hopeful. "Can we go home?" she asked. The question hit deeper than anything else, because for the first time in a long time, home didn't feel like a place. It felt like something we had to rebuild together. "Yes," I said, and this time I didn't feel like I was doing it alone. The courtroom slowly emptied, but I didn't notice most of it. I didn't hear the shuffle of chairs, the quiet conversations, or even the echo of footsteps fading down the hallway. All I could feel, I didn't feel like I was doing it alone. The courtroom slowly emptied, but I didn't notice most of it. I didn't hear the shuffle of chairs, the quiet conversations, or even the echo of footsteps fading down the hallway. All I could feel was Emily's hand still holding mine. It had been so long since she reached for me like that. Not out of habit, not out of obligation, but because she needed me, and that changed everything. "Mom," she said softly as we stepped outside the courthouse. The sunlight hit us suddenly, almost too bright after the heaviness of the room we had just left. I blinked, trying to adjust not just to the light, but to everything that had just happened. "Yes," I replied. She hesitated. Then she let go of my hand, only to wrap her arms around me instead. Tightly, like she was afraid I might disappear. I froze for a second. Not because I didn't want it, but because I had almost forgotten what it felt like. Then, slowly, I wrapped my arms around her too. And just like that, 15 years of silence, distance, and pain started to shift. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my shoulder. I closed my eyes. "I know," I said gently. "No, you don't," she said, pulling back slightly, her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't just doubt you. I turned against you. I believed him over you." "You didn't know the truth," I said. "But I should have trusted you," she insisted. "Trust isn't something you force," I replied. "It's something you build." She shook her head. "And I broke it," she said. I reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. "No," I said. "We both did." She looked at me confused. "I should have told you sooner," I admitted. "I thought I was protecting you, but maybe I was just delaying something inevitable." Her lips trembled slightly. "I wish you had told me," she said. "I know," I replied. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, really seeing each other. Not through assumptions, not through silence, but through truth. Behind us, the courthouse doors opened again. David walked out. For a second, I felt Emily tense beside me, but she didn't move away. She didn't step toward him either. She just stood, still, grounded, present, and that told me everything. He approached slowly, carefully, like he wasn't sure what version of her he was going to face. "Emily," he said. She didn't respond right away. She took a breath, then turned to face him. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was something firm in it now, something new. "I just want to talk," he said. She let out a quiet breath. "No," she replied. The word landed clean. "Final. You don't get to just talk now," she continued. "Not after everything. I made mistakes," he said quickly. "I admit that." But you lied," she interrupted. He hesitated. "I didn't tell you everything he said." "That's the same thing," she replied. Silence stretched between them. "You let me believe my own mother was the problem," she said. I didn't. You did, she said firmly. And I believed you. Her voice softened slightly. And that's on me, she added. But what you did, that's on you. David looked at her, searching for something. Understanding, forgiveness, anything. But she didn't give it to him. Emily, he said, his voice quieter now. I'm still your father. She held his gaze for a long moment, and then she said something that changed everything. Being a father isn't about what you are, she said. It's about what you do. He didn't respond, because there was nothing he could say. You lost that a long time ago, she added. The words were calm, but they carried weight, finality. I don't hate you, she continued. But I don't trust you either. David's shoulders dropped slightly, like something inside him had finally given up. And right now, she said, that matters more. He nodded slowly. Once, then turned and walked away. Not arguing, not pushing, just leaving. And this time I knew he wouldn't come back the same way again. Emily watched him go, not with anger, not with sadness, but with clarity. When she finally turned back to me, her expression softened. Are you okay? She asked. The question caught me off guard, because for so long I had been the one asking her that. I think so, I said, honestly. She nodded. I want to go home, she said. There was something different in the way she said it. Not just a place, but a feeling, a decision. Okay, I replied. We walked to the car together, not speaking much, but we didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It wasn't filled with doubt or distance. It was calm. When we got home, she didn't go straight to her room. She didn't close the door. Instead, she stood in the middle of the living room, looking around like she was seeing it for the first time. I used to feel safe here, she said softly. I stepped closer. You still can, I said. She turned to me. Only if we're honest with each other, she replied. I nodded. No more silence, I said. No more assumptions, she added. We stood there for a moment, and then she smiled, just a little. But it was real, and after everything we had been through, that small smile felt like something much bigger. Something that said, we weren't broken, not completely, not beyond repair. We just had to start again. The first night after everything came out, neither of us slept. Not really. We went through the motions, turned off the lights, lay in our separate rooms, tried to close our eyes, but sleep doesn't come easily when your entire understanding of your life has just shifted. For Emily, it was the weight of the truth. For me, it was the release of it. 15 years of silence doesn't just disappear overnight. It lingers. It echoes. It leaves behind a strange emptiness where the burden used to be. Around 2 a.m., I got up and walked into the kitchen. Old habit. When I couldn't sleep, I would sit there with a cup of tea and let the quiet settle around me. I didn't expect her to be there, but she was. Sitting at the table, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then she gave a small, tired smile. Guess I'm not the only one, she said. I shook my head gently. No, I replied. I poured 2 cups of tea without asking. She didn't protest. We sat across from each other, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the room. I keep trying to remember, she said after a while. My chest tightened. You don't have to. I said. I know, she replied, but it feels strange knowing something happened and not being able to see it in my own mind. I nodded slowly. That's how memory works sometimes, I said. It protects us, even when we don't realize it. She traced the rim of her cup with her finger. Were you scared? She asked quietly. The question caught me off guard. Yes, I said honestly. I was terrified. Not just that night Schwa's terrified. Not just that night, she added. After. When you were raising me alone. I let out a small breath. All the time, I admitted. She looked up at me. But you never showed it, she said. I couldn't, he added. After. When you were raising me alone. I let out a small breath. All the time, I admitted. She looked up at me. But you never showed it, she said. I couldn't, I replied. You needed to feel safe. Her eyes softened. And you carried all of that by yourself, she said. I chose to, I corrected gently. She shook her head. No, she said. You shouldn't have had to. We sat in silence for a moment, but this silence was different. It wasn't filled with tension. It wasn't heavy. It was no, she said. You shouldn't have had to. We sat in silence for a moment, but this silence was different. It wasn't filled with tension. It wasn't heavy. It was understanding. I wish I had known, she said finally. I know, I replied. I would have seen you differently, she added. I gave in you differently, she added. I gave a small, sad smile. That's what I was afraid of, I said. She leaned forward slightly. Yeah, she said, but not the way you think. I frowned a little. What do you mean? I wouldn't have seen you as someone who hid things from me, she explained. I would have seen you as someone who protected me. My throat tightened. Emily. But I also get why you didn't tell me, she continued. I just wish we had found a way to talk about it sooner. I nodded. So do I said. She took a deep breath. Can we try something? She asked. Of course, I replied. No more secrets, she said. Even if it's hard, even if it hurts. I held her gaze. No more silence, I agreed. She smiled slightly. And no more assuming the worst, she added. I let out a quiet breath. That might be the hardest part, I said. She gave a small laugh. Yeah, she said, for both of us. We finished our tea in that quiet, steady understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. The next few days weren't perfect. Healing never is. There were awkward moments, conversations that stopped halfway because neither of us knew what to say. Times when she would look at me like she was still trying to reconcile who I was with who she thought I had been. But there were also small things, important things. She started sitting with me again in the evenings. We cooked together, watched old movies. Sometimes we didn't even talk, but we didn't need to, because the distance was gone. One afternoon, about a week later, she came into the living room holding something in her hands. I found this, she said. It was an old paper, worn at the edges, folded carefully. I recognized it immediately. Her essay, from when she was 10 years old. My mom is the strongest person I know, she read softly. My chest tightened. She works all night and still smiles in the morning, she continued. She never gives up, even when things are hard. Her voice wavered slightly. I meant this, she said, looking at me. I know, I replied. I just forgot for a while, she added. I shook my head gently. You didn't forget, I said. You just got lost. She smiled faintly. Yeah, she said, but I found my way back. She walked over and sat beside me, leaning her head gently on my shoulder. And in that moment, I realized something important. We hadn't gone back to how things used to be. We had built something new, something stronger, because now it wasn't based on assumptions, or silence, or protection at the cost of truth. It was built on understanding, on honesty, on the choice to stay even when things got hard. I love you, Mom, she said quietly. I closed my eyes for a second. I love you too, I replied. And this time, there was no fear behind it, no hesitation, just truth, pure and simple. And after everything we had been through, that was more than enough. CTTA. Sometimes the deepest wounds in a family are not caused by hatred, but by silence. By the things we choose not to say, believing we are protecting the people we love. Rachel thought she was shielding her daughter from pain, from fear, from memories too heavy for a child to carry. And in many ways, she was. But life has a way of bringing truth back to the surface, especially when it has been buried for too long. Emily's journey reminds us of something equally powerful, that misunderstanding often grows in the absence of truth. When we don't have answers, we create our own. And sometimes those answers lead us away from the very people who love us the most. She didn't turn against her mother because she was cruel. She did it because she was searching for clarity, for honesty, for something real. This story is not about blame. It's about the fragile balance between protection and honesty, between love and trust. It teaches us that love alone is not always enough. We must also have the courage to communicate, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it hurts. Because the truth, no matter how painful, has the power to heal, while silence often creates distance. If there's one lesson to take away, it's this. Before you judge someone you love, pause. Ask questions. Listen fully. There may be a story behind their silence that you cannot see. And if you are the one holding that silence, maybe it's time to let someone in. If this story touched your heart, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever misunderstood someone you love or been misunderstood yourself? Share your experience in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more meaningful stories like this.